Greetings and welcome to the podcast Guided Life Plan. My name is Bob McGurty. I'm your host, I'm your storyteller, and my entire goal in these podcasts are to help you in your own life and in your own life plan. I've got a lot to share today. I've got a suspicion that this may be one of the more popular podcasts over time, and we're going to unpack a couple of crazy stories, and I'm going to give you some proof that these are real stories, some evidence for the ones that I can. But today we're going to talk about New York City. We're going to talk about Hell's Angels, Bo Diddley, Harley Davidson, Frank Sinatra, and Jerry Garcia, and how I connect to these pieces and through some things that happened in my earlier life. Before we do that, just want to give a reminder of the purpose of this podcast. It's if you're entertained, that's great. If you laugh, that's great. You cry, if it's good tears, that's great. But more than anything, this podcast is designed to help you be the best you that you can possibly be. How does that happen? You hear a story of my struggles and I came to the other side and you're in struggles, you too can get there. If you think, well, my life isn't XYZ what I dreamed it to be because I had a difficult upbringing or I had all these obstacles. You'll hear about some obstacles I had. Um, More than anything, I just want to help you in your own personal life plan. Let me share a quote that I read a couple of days ago in my what I call journal that I do every day and put my goals for the day. It's created by a company called Best Self. Love the journal. And this quote by Jim Rohn was on February 19th, a few days ago. And it says, if you don't design your own life plan, chances are you'll fall into someone else's plan. And guess what they have planned for you? Not much. That quote is by Jim Rohn. It's awesome. I love it. And I hope you have much planned for your life and you accomplish even more. I have now, this is our third podcast in addition to the introduction. The first one, I shared my adoption story, which to date has been the most popular one. And then most recently, I talk about depression and some things that I've gone through and what I've learned. And today, again, New York City, Hell's Angels, Bo Diddley, Harley Davidson, Frank Sinatra, and Jerry Garcia. When I was a teenager, I was living in Highland Lakes, New Jersey. My mom had married for the third time to Tom Kent. And about 2 or 3 years into that time, somewhere about my sophomore, junior year, it could have been sophomore and junior or junior and senior, but mom decided that it would be good for us to go visit cousin Collette. And cousin Collette, if you happen to come on this podcast and hear it, I'd love to get your feedback and your input, and it might be fun to do a podcast with you. But I first met cousin Collette when I was a young boy, 5, 6 years old. She came with my Aunt Nancy to Romeoville, Illinois, where we were living. And the stories I hear from about cousin Collette is that she was a wild child. So anyhow, we jump to, I'm about 15 years old, and mom decides that it would be good for my little brother Bernie and I to go and visit Collette in New York City. And so mom takes us to Warwick, New York, the closest bus station. We get on a bus to Grand Central Station, I believe, somewhere in New York City, and cousin Collette picks us up. Now keep in mind, we're 15 and 11. We're going by ourselves to New York City. It's the 1970s, and there's no cell phone, and hopefully Collette will be there. And she was. Now, a little bit that you've got to know about Collette, and this is somewhere between 75 and 78, 1975 and 1978. Collette was married to a man named Sandy Alexander. Sandy, at that time and up until about 1984, was the president of the New York City chapter Hells Angels. Yep, my cousin Collette married to Sandy Alexander, president, New York City chapter Hells Angels. And mom decided 15-year-old Bobby and 11-year-old Bernie should spend a couple weeks with cousin Collette and, of course, Sandy. And so, I had two incredibly interesting summers. I will probably talk about more than the topics that I mentioned there. I will do my best to keep this interesting and real, and I want to wrap up with some data that you can verify these things with. So we get to the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, which at that time was on 77 East 3rd Street in Manhattan, also known as Hell's Kitchen in Greenwich Village. This was before there was a cooking show called Hell's Kitchen. There were Hell's Angels who had a motorcycle club 4 stories high, 77 East 3rd Street. You can Google that and see it. And the first thing that happened, and I'll talk about my Harley Davidson experience, and it's a bit embarrassing actually, but so Bernie and we arrive, and we're at the motorcycle club, and at the home that was owned by Sandy and Collette. The downstairs part was the bike shop and the actual club, and then there were 2 other floors which I never went in, and I can guess what they were, but we were up on that 4th story. Sandy and Collette had a young boy, Eric, and if I remember right, Eric was maybe a year younger, maybe 2 or 3 years younger, but a little bit younger than my youngest brother. So I'm 15, Bernie's 11, Eric's 8 or 9. And we get into the building, and we start going up the stairs, and Sandy turns around and looks at me. This is the husband of my cousin, the president of New York City chapter Hells Angels. And he says to me, "Do you know how to ride a bike?" I know what he's asking, and my brain is just going 7 directions of how I can answer this and get in the least trouble possible. I could say yes, because I could say a bike is a bicycle, because that's about all I'd ridden. I may have been on a little mini bike, small motorcycle at that point, but I really couldn't ride a bike. And I decided, you know what? I'm in New York City. I'm in his hands. I better answer this as truthfully as possible. And I said no. And he literally throws the keys to his Harley Davidson at me. And he said, "How old are you, Bobby?" And, I guess I was 15 at the time. And I told him, and he goes, "Well, that's too old to not know how to ride. If you need a place to sleep tonight, you might want to figure out how to ride." So I go down the stairs, and we'd only been up a few stairs, not quite to the next floor. And I'm holding the keys to the president of New York City chapter Hells Angels, Harley Davidson, and scared to death. And all the, quite a few of the club members are there with their Hells Angels colors on, their vests with the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, New York City on it. And one of the guys had a vest on, but no shirt underneath. So literally you can see his chest, and his nickname, and the only name I ever knew him by, was Pinball. And if you can imagine a man's chest from below the neck to waist was an entire tattoo of an entire pinball machine. And Pinball said, you don't know how to ride, do you? I said, no. So he heard the conversation. I'm sure Sandy was loud enough, and maybe that was intentional. Long story, somewhat short. He tells me to get on the back of his bike. He actually gave the keys to someone else, which was good. I did not want to be on Sandy's bike. And we go to the end of the block. It's like maybe a full city block or more. And about halfway, I kind of tap Pinball, and he kind of pulls to the side. You don't go to the side of the road. You own the road when you're a Hell's Angel. And he says, "What?" And I said to him, "If I get hurt on this bike and I don't have a helmet on, my mother will kill me." And that's kind of funny if you think about it. But then again, if you knew Mom, yes, she might send me to New York City, but if I wasn't wearing a helmet, riding a motorcycle, which is illegal to do at 15, no license, no knowledge. And so he says, "Okay, I got you." And a few feet later, he just steals a helmet off of a bike and tells me to put it on my head. And we get far enough away that the other club members couldn't see us, and taught me how to ride a Harley. And um, I've never really ridden a bike, and a lot of you who are my friends who are Harley riders know I can't, and I just don't. And maybe it's because of what happened to me at 15 or 16 years old. And he's helping me. This is crash course before dark. I've got to ride the motorcycle, so he's going through all this, go fast, not too fast. If you go too slow, it won't go anywhere. If you go too fast, you're going to get hurt. And he's going up and down the road, and the club members, the Hells Angels guys, are coming back and forth, and they're seeing us, and everybody's laughing, and the bikes are going up and down. And so finally someone gets the idea, and we bring us closer, and so it's less than a city block, and they just close down the road, which they always could. They had the barricades that said police only or do not enter, whatever, and they would put them up when they had block parties and whatnot. So they block off the road, and now is my moment. And so I get on this bike, and those of you that understand Harley know that I don't understand it, and all I'm telling you is from my memory. And I haven't ridden a bike well enough to know the logistics of this, but at any rate, I know I'm going slow enough and fast enough. And he told me when I got in front of the clubhouse that, I could just let off of the gas, and literally those guys would make sure I don't fall or get hurt. So I'm going fast enough and slow enough. And I get to the clubhouse, and something happens. I've got a motorcycle helmet on. Something happens, and I panic, and I go through a wrong sequence. Maybe I'm supposed to hit the gas a little. Instead, I slam the brake. But what happens next is the back of the motorcycle goes in the air, slams the road, and the front goes up really high. And for those that were watching, it looked like I knew what the heck I was doing and showing off. I am crying and I am screaming, but I got a helmet on so nobody can really see it. And so they thought I was showing off. Everybody laughed, had fun. And let me just say this without putting too much shame and embarrassment on myself. I am just panic and frozen. And let's just say my jeans may or may not have gotten a lot of moisture. I peed myself. I was so scared to death, crying. I mean, it was just crazy. But they didn't know because the helmet was on, and I just threw it on the ground, and it was interpreted that I was showing off. Nothing could be further from the truth. And I can tell you, for 2 months after that, I got home and I had this old rickety bicycle that I had spray painted green, old school. I couldn't even get on my bicycle for 2 months because of just what had happened, and I thought I was going to die. So that's my first experience of riding a Harley in New York City, 77 East 3rd Street, Manhattan, Greenwich Village, Hell's Kitchen. So we did this for 2 summers. We hung out, and I didn't get asked to ride the bike again, thank God. One night in those 2 weeks, we went to this place, and it was kind of a speakeasy where there was kind of rhythm and blues sort of music, and there was an artist there, and people were crazy about, and I didn't even know who he was or about him. Again, this is mid to late 70s. It was Bo Diddley, and he was jamming in this little speakeasy. The police had come in, and my brother wasn't with me. I was probably the only one in that room that was younger than 30. And so the police tried to throw me out, not knowing that who my cousin was. And, um, and the moment he did that, Bo Diddley stopped playing and said, "He's with me, leave him alone." And he barked some order for me to do something musical that I did not know or understand, but I faked like I was doing something. The police left. And the end of the night, Bo Diddley gave me, and I have it, and I can take pictures for it. It's in my safe, a ceramic, kind of a Mayan stone that it's yellow and black, and it has his name on it that he had painted. So that was my experience with Bo Diddley. Um, Frank Sinatra, and you can believe me or not, I don't have any way of proving this, but one of the nights we went to, Sandy and Collette went out, and they told us to stay upstairs. And they said, if you get any phone call, and again, this is the 70s, not the day of cell phones. If you get any phone call, just write the message down and ask who's calling and ask if there's a number, and whatever. And so the phone rang a couple of times. I took some messages, and so Sandy and Colette get home, and they said, "Do you know who that was?" And I'm like, I wrote it down, and this is who it was. And I said, that was Frank Sinatra. All I got was this guy called and said, "Hey, is Sandy there?" And I'm like, "No, may I ask who's calling?" He said, "You tell him Frankie called." I said, "Can I have your number?" And of course, he hung up before that could happen. So I did talk to Frank Sinatra enough to take a message. On to Jerry Garcia. So, because of who my cousin was, on one of our trips, I ended up going, or I think we were there in the summer. And then later, Sandy and Colette, my cousin Colette, called me and said, "Hey, uh, do you listen to the Grateful Dead?" And I said, "Well, I've heard them." And she said, "You want to go to a concert?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, I'll go to a concert." And so I believe it was January of 1979, and I believe it was the Madison Square Garden. I went to a Grateful Dead concert, and I've got pictures, one with me with my arm around Jerry Garcia, and another one with Bob Weir and Sharon, who were part of the Grateful Dead. And so that's part of my proof. I can show you. I have a picture of me and Jerry Garcia. All you have to do is send an email to bengalibob@gmail and say, "Prove it. Show me your picture with Jerry." Quite a crazy teenage life. There's a movie. I'm not recommending the movie, but I'm kind of proving that these stories I'm telling really did happen. There's a movie that my cousin Sandy was the co-producer of, a little story of the Hells Angels, and then we'll move on from there and kind of wrap up the storytelling for today. But um, for those of you that don't know, the history and the story of the Hells Angels in the United States were mostly war veterans who came home, didn't really fit in society, didn't have much money, and initially were good Samaritans who would make an extra buck helping stranded motorists, getting them gas, starting the car, that kind of thing. And over time, they were rejected by society and they turned into what you more likely know as and of the Hells Angels. One of the interesting things I found in my 2 summers was the fact that the Hells Angels and the police were not enemies, frenemies maybe. They helped each other, and I could tell a couple stories about that, but probably better I don't put on podcasts the specifics. But I can tell you they worked together. I remember one funny story. One of the summers we were there, my cousin Eric, again, he was maybe 8, 9, 10, somewhere in there. He owned that city. There was nobody would touch him because they knew that was Sandy and Colette's son, a little younger than my younger brother, and anything he wanted, people just gave to him. And interestingly, or humorously, good humor, um, right next to the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club on 77 East 3rd Street, the Good Humor Ice Cream Company came, and they moved. It wasn't a warehouse. They weren't making ice cream, but it was a building right next to theirs. And the bicycle carts that would go ringing the bell selling ice cream, there'd be about a dozen of them that would be on the bottom. And then maybe they had some offices on the floor or two above. And I was there the day they moved in, and literally old school 1970s, Good Humor guy, all white uniform, ball cap with Good Humor written on it, knocks on the door to the club, asks to see Sandy, gets up there, and it is funny. You've got Hell's Angels president talking to the Good Humor neighbor, the Good Humor ice cream neighbor in full white uniform and ball cap, and said, "Sir, I'm here to help you, and I think we can help each other." And he said, "Yeah, what's that?" And he said, "We've just moved in, and we just had an executive meeting, and we are of the opinion that the Hells Angels should not have to pay for electricity." And he said, "Yeah, I don't think I should have to pay either." He said, "So if you'll give permission, our electrician's going to rewire your electricity, and we'll just send it over to Good Humor. And we're just going to put that as part of our security maintenance." And he goes, "Don't worry, you guys won't get robbed." And that was a relationship. And there's many stories like that I experienced in that summer together. So we talked about New York City, Hells Angels, Bo Diddley, Harley Davidson, Frank Sinatra, Jerry Garcia. I have the picture of me and Jerry Garcia, as well as me and Bob Weir with Sharon off to the side from the Grateful Dead. I know you can do some research on Sandy Alexander, find out about his wife, Collette. I can show you through Ancestry.com that she's my cousin. Frank Sinatra, yeah, you could just say that wasn't true. I made it up. I didn't, but if you need evidence, I don't think I have it. Bo Diddley, I have that ceramic piece that he gifted to me. But there's a movie I was starting to say that I'm not recommending the movie, but to know a little more about my cousin Sandy, he began a movie to tell his story of the Hells Angels. And initially it was bought by Columbia Records. He was a co-producer. And just before it got to the final deal where it would become a movie by Columbia, some things happened. They reneged on the deal. It didn't happen. And a few years later, my cousin Sandy ended up going to jail or my cousin's husband Sandy ended up going to jail for organized crime charges. And this movie became a documentary. It's quite interesting. One of the organized crime officials with the FBI, who was a born again Christian, tells his story in this movie called Angels Forever, Forever Angels. It's a documentary come expose about the Hells Angels, and he talked about how my cousin's husband Sandy was a criminal, did things wrong, but the things that put him in jail, that the law was just as criminal in their behavior and did illegal things that got him to jail. So it's quite an interesting movie. I would have to find, and I saw it on YouTube once, but you know how YouTube is, people grab YouTube clips and make them their own so that their ratings go up. But in one of these originals of the movie, and if you come across the original at 3 minutes and 21 seconds in the original part of that movie, my brother and I are sitting on a curb in New York City, and Hell's Angels are going by, and we're just kind of sitting out there, and you can look at the age I am and go, and you were on a Harley. How did you live to tell the story? Throughout my life, many people have heard my stories, and it's hard to tell to outsiders because they're not believable, and the insiders who know enough of it, that they go, yeah, that is true. Friends of mine in high school more than once saw me show up to school with the Hells Angels, where I'd ask my cousin, because he was visiting, again, I say my cousin's husband Sandy, to give me a ride to school, and the principal would be scared to death, call the police, etc. And he was just dropping me off for school. So, but people just say, how the people that know me from the inside are like, you have to tell your story, you have to write a book, and that's this process. In all of that, God kept me, spared me, kept his hand on me, and I'm still alive at 61 to tell these stories, and it's fun. So yeah, 2 summers, Hells Angels, Bo Diddley, Harley Davidson, Frank Sinatra, Jerry Garcia, and stayed alive and made it through and came out to the other side. We all have stories, and they can be more dramatic than that, less dramatic than that. They can have less happier endings, if you will, more drama. But in all of these things, I know that God's hand was on me. I know that the club that I lived in for 2 weeks times 2 summers had a lot of activity going on, whether that was drugs or sex or other things, and somehow I was kept from all that, and I'm grateful that I could be in the midst of that and yet be exposed and yet not influenced to make some really poor decisions, and got to, meet people the likes of Jerry Garcia and Bo Diddley, and yeah, some pretty interesting stuff. I'm telling these stories, and my brain is kind of like in a camera, going back and imagining and remembering and thinking about those experiences of what we did and what we saw. I My cousin Collette came to my wedding in the mid late 70s and early 1980s. Collette was a part of our family, and we would visit each other. She and Eric especially would sometimes come to Highland Lakes, New Jersey, and visit us. I remember Eric and my brother Bernie fishing on a dock, and Eric threw Bernie in the water. Bernie was a little bit mad, but Eric was a bit younger, and Eric said, "Well, you need to throw me in now." And Bernie goes, "I'm not going to throw you in the water. That's not nice." And he goes, "No, you have to throw me in." And he's like, I don't have to throw you. No, you really have to throw me in." And Bernie goes, well, why do I have to throw you in the water? He goes, well, I threw you in, so you should throw me in. And Bernie goes, no, that doesn't make sense. And he goes, no, you have to throw me in the water. And Bernie goes, well, why, Eric? He goes, because I want to throw you in again. And my dad says, I can't be mean to you again until you're mean to me first. So be mean to me. And so he grew up with a certain set of values and morals, and it was interesting. My cousin Collette came to my confirmation. I was a Catholic back then, and came to the confirmation service. And those of you that are Catholics would know that a part of that confirmation service, at least then, I don't know about today, the lead religious leader, it was usually more than the local priest. It might be a bishop or, someone in authority would come, and they would do that final sacrament of confirmation. And part of it is they would tap your cheek. I'm not going to say slap, but it was kind of a soft, gentle tap. And when the religious leader did that to my face, my cousin Collette stood up in the congregation and let him know that he better not touch me. it was humorous. And again, Collette, if you're listening, tell me what you remember. Would love to reminisce with you. Guys, I tell the stories that I tell, yes, for humor, yes, for inspiration. I would be more than glad to validate the stories that I can, send you some photos, a picture of the gift from Bo Diddley, a picture of me with my arm around Jerry Garcia, or a picture of me with Bob Weir and Sharon off to the side from the Grateful Dead. You can Google some details. I can look for the original Angels Forever, Forever Angels, Story of the Hells Angels, co-produced by Sandy Alexander, and find that clip of my brother and I in that movie. But these are stories that I hope just help you. If nothing else, wow, you had that crazy life and now you're an ordained minister and you've been a missionary and you've done this and that. Yeah, there's hope for me. If that's all this story does, that's good. If it just makes you laugh, if it makes you go, wow, I didn't know that, it's all good. It's all good. Thanks for being here. Would love to know any feedback that you have, any thoughts. Been going through a number of upcoming stories. I want to tell the story of one of my early jobs as a teenager, working as a waiter in a unique place. Tell some stories of my early Air Force days, and I definitely want to focus in on the time I did CPR on my mom, and kind of how that went, and the miracle story of her surviving. But thanks for listening. Thanks for being a part of the Guided Life Plan. One of the things I'd like to tell you about, and I'm in the process of updating my website, guidedlifeplan.com. But if you go on that website, guidedlifeplan.com, and if you sign up to get our newsletters, forget the newsletters. The gift that you'll get is that you will, every day of the week, be able to click on and get a video review of leadership books. The videos are sometimes as quick as 2 or 3 minutes. They've been as long as 15 minutes, but there will be a different book. And I think it's not every single day. So in the course of a week, there's either 3 or 4 books that are reviewed. This is a gift for you. It's by a company, a man who was previously a lawyer. It's called Grow It For Me. And you can listen to these leadership books. You can pull out points, and these may be books that you're interested in buying, but you'd like to hear first. And the principles are great, but it's a gift. And the way you can get that gift is go on guidedlifeplan.com, sign up for the newsletter, and you'll get a link, and just keep that link and and you can go on that on a regular basis and catch these leadership book videos. It's a cool thing to get. Anyhow, this is Bob McGurty. It's been fun to be your host. And I have to be honest and say, while I was telling the story, a couple times my mind just kind of wandered because I was going back to the 1970s and remembering some of these events. If you'd like to reach me by my personal email, it's bengalibob@gmail.com. BENGALI, Bengali, like the Bengali tiger, and Bob like Bob, bengalibob@gmail.com. Looking forward to the next episode. Have a great day. Have a great life. And do all that you can do and be all that you can be. And if I can help you with that, just let me know.